What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today I'll be breaking down this two-game NFL slate here for Monday Night Football. We have the Bucs versus the Texans, and then the Chargers versus the Raiders. So usually there's only one Monday Night Football game. We have two, so super pumped for that. Going to be going through kind of my favorite plays, going through the stats of how you guys should be building your lineups and who to target tonight. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Check out my Twitter at HartDFS. As you can see here, I know you guys liked the kind of tweet breakdown last week going into Monday Night Football, so I did it again for this slate. As you guys can see, I go through all four teams. I put up all the stats that you guys need to know when it comes to the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So make sure to go check that out. As you can see, snap count percent, the routes, the targets, the target percent, and then the rushing attempts for all four teams. You got the Bucs, you got the Texans there, and then I just threw up the Chargers and then the Raiders as well. So go check that out. Make sure to follow me there on Twitter, and let's get into this slate's breakdown. So overall, it was a great weekend for me. I was able to cash every single one of my lineups in terms of the Sunday main slate. Uh, Tried to put one afternoon slate in, didn't cash that, but then I did cash the Sunday night football slate as well. So pretty solid, pretty good slate overall. Had a lot of success, hit on a lot of things I talked about in my Sunday slate breakdown video, especially the Lions in that Bears game. Said it could be a potential shootout. Really like that. Really like Malik Neighbors. Really liked George Pickens. So it was a really solid weekend for me. Didn't win like a ton of money, but you always can be happy about winning your money back and winning a few bucks on top of that. So let's break down the slate. Taking a quick look at the odds and the spreads and the lines. Right now, it's a 2.5 point spread favored to the Texans, 42.5 game total. And then for the Chargers and Raiders, 3.5 point spread favored to the Chargers, 46.5 game total there. So obviously a little bit better of an environment to target in terms of DFS. Now moving on to the slates here, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between kind of the slate and my stats I put up on my Twitter at HeartDFS just to kind of help out with the analysis for this breakdown. So start off here with game one. We'll kind of do it, game by game, going through all the stats, and then just overall, kind of taking that into effect and kind of building a dummy lineup for you guys. So in terms of the quarterbacks on the slate, obviously we have Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and Geno Smith. Um, for this slate tonight, it really comes down to ownership. Like, if I had to choose, obviously, most people are going to go with Herbert and Mayfield just because of the wide receivers you can pair with them and just knowing that you're going to get at least 25 to 30 attempts out of those quarterbacks. And they both have, decent rushing upside that, a lot of people don't talk about. Baker 5 for 39, and then Justin Herbert 7 for 32. Now, they're not design runs, but they're more scrambles. But it's nice to see that both of those quarterbacks do have that two to, like, let's say 5 point upside range when it comes to rushing, just from scrambling, and then Stroud and Smith. Stroud can scramble a little bit, as you can see there, went 5 for 32. Smith only 2 for 10. It just really comes down to just not a lot of trust in the passing game for Stroud and Smith for me personally. Now, obviously, we know both can have solid games. Smith coming off a 21 fantasy point game there, threw for 362 and a touchdown. Obviously, Brock Bowers was hurt as well, so that maybe could add another touchdown there in his stat line. DJ Stroud, just an awful game one there against the Rams. Now the Rams are a good defense, so cut him a little bit of slack. But yeah, it's just it's kind of tough to like the Texans right now. So right now for me, I think I'm just going to stick with Baker and Justin Herbert. But if on a two-game slate, if you're trying to take down 500K to first, you're going to want to get a little bit different. I don't think it's a bad look to get down to Stroud or Smith if you're going to try to get different that way, just depending on ownership, right? Like if Mayfield and Herbert are going to command all the ownership for this two-game slate, it makes a little bit of sense to, get a little bit of leverage on the field and go to the lower owned guys like a Stroud or Smith. But yeah, in terms of price difference, no one's really, priced too crazy. So it kind of keeps all the options open there in terms of like who you want to get to, and not having to break the bank to pay up for a quarterback. So right now for me, I think I'm leaning towards Baker over Herbert, but both look great for tonight. Now, in terms of the running backs, let's take a quick look across the board. So for the running back situation for the Bucs right now, Bucky Irving played 76% of the snaps. He saw 21 routes, got 4 targets, 19% target percent there. He needed 14 rush attempts, and then Rashad White 24% of the snaps, 4 routes, 1 target. Obviously, 25%, target percent looks good, but when you compare it to kind of the broader work of both running backs, obviously 2 rush attempts, it's Bucky White's backfield there for the Bucs, so lots to like there. And Sean Tucker, I think he only played like 2 snaps at most, very, very little amount, so don't really have to worry about him. It's really just the Bucky Irving show, and then if you do wanna get super, super risky, you could go to, Rachaad White, but I really don't think there's a need. And in terms of the Texans, let's just take a quick look for the running back situation there. Nick Chubb played 51% of the snaps. Dare played 27. Woody Marks and Pierce, and who was the other guy? I think it was Brooks, possibly, or maybe it was their fullback. Played 11%. Don't really need to worry about those guys. It's really just the Nick Chubb show. And then for passing downs, Dare will be in there. So as you can see, Chubb saw most of the rushing attempts, 13 attempts compared to Dare's 2. But Dare, saw more of the routes run, or excuse me, more of the targets. He ran 6 routes for 2 targets. Nick Chubb ran 8 routes for 1. So it was still nice to see Chubb get some targets. But yeah, if they're going to be down, I think you're want to rather take the shot on Dare. You could still go with Chubb, but if they're up, obviously Nick Chubb's going to be the better game script back to go to there. So that's kind of the situation for the running back room for both sides. And then in terms of the wide receivers and tight ends, let's take a quick look there for the wide receiver room for the Bucks. As you can see, it's kind of just a main three wide receiver room for them. You got Mecca, Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard, 93, 83, and 64% of the snap counts there. Um, Mike Evans obviously led the way with 8 targets. Emeka and Sterling both got 6. Tez Johnson only had 14% of the snaps and got 1 target there. And in terms of the tight ends, it was pretty much just the K. Dotton show. 86% of snaps, 27 routes, 3 targets. And then moving on to the Texans real fast for the wide receiver and tight ends from them there. Nico Collins led the wide receiver room, and they ran, as you can see, 5 different wide receivers out there. Obviously, Nico Collins is going to be wide receiver 1. Hutchinson was that wide receiver 2. And then wide receiver 3 was really split up between Watson, Higgins, and Noel. All of them getting, some looks. Noel, 2 targets. Higgins, 3. Watson, 2. But pretty much it's just the Nico Collins show and then kind of a crapshoot below that. It was nice to see 21 routes from Xavier Hutchinson. So I think we can say it's safe to say, or relatively safe to say, that Hutchinson will be that wide receiver 2. But then in terms of wide receiver 3, it's really just a dart throw here, a crapshoot. Obviously, it's more so between Watson and Higgins, but there is Noel there as well. He got the same amount of targets as Watson, but played, about half as much as Watson did. So interesting to see there, just in terms of dart throws we can go to. And then for tight ends, Cade Stover was kind of more so the starter. Schultz was limited, but they pretty much just split. Schultz ran more routes, got more targets. So keep that in mind. And then quickly, we'll do the same thing for the Chargers and the Raiders. And then we'll kind of build out that lineup. So for the Chargers and the Raiders, heading over to the Chargers side, it was the Amari and Hampton shows. You can see 80% of the snaps, 18 routes, 2 targets, 15 rush attempts. And then for Najee, 18% of the snaps. Only saw 5 routes, 1 target, and 1 rushing attempt. Now, he was limited coming into that game, so I expect this number 80% and 18% to probably jump down to, I'd say, maybe 65% and 35% for Najee. So kind of that 60-40 split, maybe 70-30 still. We'll have to wait and see kind of what the coach speak is throughout the rest of the day here. Hopefully, we get a better picture. But yeah, expect Najee Harris's attempts and the snap count percent to jump up a lot here going into tonight's game. So definitely makes them viable for wide receivers for the Chargers. It's pretty much just a 3 wide receiver show. McConkey, Johnston, and Allen, and they will mix in some Lambert Smith there as a 4th wide receiver. And then for the tight ends, Will Dissly, Conklin, kind of splitting that tight end share there. And then moving on to the Raiders here. For the Raiders side, it's kind of like the Bucks. It's just pretty much the Ashton Genty show. Zamir Wright just more so to go in there to kind of give Genty a rest or 2. But yeah, it's really just Ashton Genty show. For wide receivers, it's just a 3 wide receiver set for them. They really don't look to anyone else. It's just the main 3 guys: Myers, Trey, and Dante Thornton. And then for the tight ends, it is Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers. They did run a ton of 2 tight end sets there in that first game. in week one. Obviously, Brock Bowers got hurt, so they brought in Ian Thomas there, as you can see, 32% of the snaps. But yeah, it was pretty much the Brock and Michael Mayer show in terms of tight ends. So they ran in a lot of two tight end sets, only three wide receivers. So a lot to like there in terms of the tight end situation for the Raiders. Now moving on to kind of across the board for the slates for the running back situation. As you know, we kind of mentioned for these stats here. Just quickly go back to the Bucks. I think Bucky Irving's going to be a must play for me just because of that chokehold he has on the running back room there for the Bucks. As I mentioned, 76% of snaps, ran 21 routes, uh, got four targets as well there. So a lot to like for him. He ran what one, two, three, the fifth most routes on the team. A lot to like there for Bucky. So he's pretty much a must play for me. And then it's a toss up for the next couple guys for me. Like I like Genti. If we take a look at his stats here real fast, he's going to dominate the rushing attempts. Saw 19, only for 38 yards. So the offensive line is a little bit of a problem there. And I think the Bucks D is a little bit better than kind of what they showed. They went against one of the best running backs last week, or if not the best running back in the league, Bijan. And I think they held him to 25 yards, but obviously hit 100 reception yards. And then Ashton Genty is not much of a receiver compared to Bijan. So I'm a little iffy on Ashton, even though it should be a massive workload for him. So maybe that keeps the ownership down. So at 7,000, I think it's a fine play, especially if the ownership's going to go to all these other running backs, especially if Bucky's going to be like double the percent of ownership compared to Ashton. I think it's fair to go to Ashton. But for me, on a 2 game slate, I'm only going to be playing probably one lineup. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get to Ashton just because of the limited pass catching upside and just the iffy line in terms of offensive line and blocking. Moving on down to Hampton here for the Chargers. Obviously, you saw 80% of the snaps. I expect Najee Harris to eat into that. And he's $1,000 less, going to see less of the work, but they're both going to be involved in the pass catching upside out of the backfield. It just really comes down to how much Najee will we see. If it's going to be a 70-30 split, will Hampton still getting 70% of the snaps? I don't think there's a need to get to Najee unless you're trying to get very, very different. Now, if it's going to be more so that 60-40, I think Najee is definitely very viable because Hampton's more so just a north and south running back. I guess you could say the same for Najee as well, but Najee obviously has a lot more experience, and Hampton did not look the best in game one. Kind of not hitting the holes he should. So, yeah, for that, I'm kind of split. It really comes down to ownership and kind of the coach speak we get going in tonight in terms of just how many snaps will Najee see. And then for the Texans situation, I hate it. Like, if you think it's gonna be a positive game script and you think the Texans are gonna be in it the whole time or even up, Chubb at 5,000 definitely looks very viable. You saw a bulk, if not all, of the rushing attempts, as we can see from my thread. So at 5,000, obviously very cheap. You would love him to fall in the end zone, but if this game gets out of hand or they need to catch up, you're gonna want to look to Dare for the Houston side. Flat minimum price 4,000. He's one of those guys that has the pass catching upside. Obviously, he had that fumble loss. So maybe they're not as confident in him. Maybe they could go to like a Woody Marks and Pierce, but the Houston Texans right now is pretty gross in terms of the wide receiver room, or excuse me, the running back room. And that's really it for the running back situation for me. A lot of bell cows, in terms of Genty, Bucky, and Hampton. And then obviously you have that secondary option of going to Chubb as kind of like the bell cow. But yeah, right now, my only core play for the running back room is going to be Bucky. Going to wait for more information to come out throughout the rest of the day for those rest of those guys. And then moving on to the wide receiver here, Lad, 6,900 for me is just a must play. If we take a look here, ran 35% of the routes, got 9 targets, 25.7% of the target percent there, 13.4 fantasy points. Obviously, Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston both did better than him last game, but he has unbelievable chemistry. He can be moved all across the field. Going up against a very weak Raiders secondary, absolutely love the ceiling here for Lad McConkey in this game tonight. Um, Nico Collins, I kind of think it's the same thing. Like, I think it's a huge bounce back opportunity for Nico Collins for tonight. Obviously, I think there might need to be a conversation about CJ Stroud and the huge fall off he's had. Obviously, as I mentioned, just the overall offensive line performance of them for them the past 2 years has not been great, but still, like it's it's just kind of you scratch your head at times about how bad the Texans have been recently. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my post here real fast. Yeah, but 27 routes, 5% or 5 targets. Like we know the ceiling a guy like Nico Collins has 7,300. Really, really like him, and then really, really like Mike Evans. Like it's gonna be hard not to get the top three running backs just because everyone across the board is relatively cheap. So when it comes down to how to get different, it's really going to be down to kind of what happens with those secondary plays in terms of like the running backs, and then maybe taking a shot on one of those wide receivers in the Houston Texans side. I think that's going to be the key if like we need to get contrarian on the slates. If everything else falls right in terms of just like the top wide receiver plays, top running back plays, it's going to come down to kind of those wide receivers in the flex spot. Like who will it be that steps up, or could it be a Kate Otten? That's kind of my take there. But yeah, absolutely love the top three wide receivers, as you guys know. I'm not as big as on Igbuka for this game, as most people are. Like, obviously, he's going to have a great season, but he only got 6 targets. He got 2 touchdowns in those 6 targets. Obviously, fantastic throws by Baker. I mean, he's going to be heavily involved, but I don't know. In terms of ownership, if people are going to be flocking all over him, I don't mind taking a fade on him. And you can pay down for guys like Jacoby Myers, 4,900. He looks amazing. Number one wide receiver for the Raiders. Quentin Johnson looks really, really good. Keenan Allen still. So I don't know if there's a really need for me personally to get to Igbuka on the slate at his price tag when you can get the same production from the guys below him. And as I mentioned, the big question mark, the head scratcher, is going to be kind of these wide receiver 2/3s for the Texans. Higgins, Noel, Hutchinson, Watson. They're all very, very cheap. And it's one of those things they could only get, maybe 1 or 2 passes and catches for this game tonight and kind of tank your lineup. So if you're looking for value, you can get down there. I don't love it, but they're there. And then moving on to the tight end situation for this game tonight. Obviously, Brock Bowers was a big question mark. Will he play? Supposedly, he wanted to get back in that game last week and play, but they held him out. And then he's obviously good to go for tonight. I don't know if it's 100%, but he should be good to go. So obviously, keep an eye out on that because obviously, if he's out, you're going to want to load up on some Michael Mayer at 3,300. I still think he's viable. They ran a ton of double tight end sets. He got 4 targets for 38 yards. Obviously, red zone threat. So he is, definitely viable at 3,300. If you're looking for a cheap value play that should still get a lot of run, even if Brock Bowers is in, I'd say he's got a little bit safer floor compared to those Houston Texans wide receivers as well. So obviously, if Brock Bowers is good to go, going to be really hard not to lock him in at 6,300 just with his massive upside, his massive target share percent on this slate. So, um, right now it's really hard not to get to all the kind of the top guys. Just as I mentioned, it's a very, very cheap slate across the boards in terms of the top plays. In the way to get different, I think right now it's just kind of what's going to happen with the running back situation when it comes to Genty. Like, will his offensive line be able to block? If they do, and he has a few big runs, like at 7,000, that's pretty cheap for a guy who's seen all the touches and attempts on the backfield for the Raiders. In terms of the Chargers, like what's going to happen with the Hampton versus the Harris split, and then for the Texans, can they run the ball? Like, will it be Nick Chubb, or will they look to kind of one of those 2 or 3 backups they have, like Dare, Woody Marks, Damian Pierce? Could they, come in and be good? Like, they could go with a hot hand there. So it's a huge question mark on this slate in terms of those. I'm going to try to stay away from those question marks and really just hope kind of the route I go and kind of saving some money helps me be a little bit more unique. But yeah, in terms right now, in terms of giving you one more kind of play that I absolutely love, it's going to be, I think for me right now, it's going to be hard not to get to Brock Bowers. Um, I know you won't be able to fit all the wide receivers, like the top guys, just with the pricing, but still, you're getting the number one wide receiver for the Chargers, number one wide receiver for the Raiders, even though he's a tight end. But kind of the best play on the board right now is Brock Bowers, and then Bucky Irving. Just it's positive to get your game script, or if it's a negative game script, he's going to be a top play there. So that's what it comes down to for me. That's kind of my 4 core plays for tonight's slates. Obviously, we got to keep an eye out on the news in terms of the running back situation for the Chargers, as well as Brock Bowers. But yeah, hope you guys liked the video. Hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.